I'm going to pass this around, and if next to your name, you could write your best email address. Best email address and best phone number.
I've already read it. Think I have the wrong one?
Well, good evening. Thank you for being here this evening. I think I've met everyone, but for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Laura McConwell, and I'm the Mayor of Mission. And we've assembled you here this evening to talk about our swimming pool. In front of your places, with everybody except for the Davidsons, you have a book, and they get to share one. The first order, we have our agenda in here, but there are a table of contents. Actually, I don't think we have our agenda in here.
Yep, they are in there.
Okay, our agenda is going to be several pages in through, but before we start that, I am going to pass around our membership of the task force. If you will please look at it, make sure your name is spelled right, and then also write down your email address, and what else do you want?
Phone number.
And your telephone number. That's a good contact number for us to reach you. And Ann, I'm going to start with you. The purpose of our task force is our pool, and all of the history will be under the tabs, and I'm going to walk you through the book. But our initial purpose for this task force is to look at our pool. We have a pool that was opened in 1956, has had several updates in the 56 years or 55 years of its existence, but it has reached the end of its useful life. And there are a number of very large maintenance items and expenses to keep the existing pool operating. And one of the things we need to, that I want you to consider, is going ahead and replacing the pool. And then if we do replace that pool, how that gets paid for. One of the things that has been sort of discussed over the years that the condition of our pool has come up, which has really been in the last 5 to 8 years, is doing some type of a sales tax initiative. And those are going to be the primary issues that you're going to be wrestling with. And then at the conclusion of this task force, we're making it pretty focused, is making a recommendation on council of the direction to go. What you're going to find in your book itself and the contents, if you open them up, the second page in it is going to have a table of contents. It's going to talk you through the history of Mission Pool, and included in the history of Mission Pool are going to be minutes basically dating back to when the pool was first considered, which was about 1953 and 1954, when they were looking at having a pool and having feasibility and the funding of the pool. It sort of walks you through the different renditions of the pool. We also have our current assessments of the pool. We have history of use. We have Mission Marlins information. And we come down to in 2005 when we had to have a sort of a master plan that was worked on, and then we have in 2008 when we did a specific citizen survey. We did a survey before that 2008 survey, but we haven't been able to locate that, but when we do, we'll provide that to you. In 2008, when we had our aquatic feasibility study that was done with the task force and also with public comment and community involvement. So I'm not going to ask you to reinvent any wheel. I want you to basically take the information that we have and to be able to use that as you're able to make your decisions. And if there's any additional information that you believe that you need to help make that recommendation, then I want to know what that is so that we can provide that. I didn't want to knee-jerk go and hire a consultant to do that, because I thought those of us that are the residents of City Mission can make a lot of those decisions on our own. So I think our next item, I have asked, as you go through the book, in addition to having a list of the members that are on here, and we'll update it so you have contact information, we also have a list of our proposed agendas for the meetings of the task force, so that you know what's going to happen and what's coming up. And so this evening, what I'm going to have, I'm going to have Jim Monomer give us sort of an overview of the history of the pool, and then also between Jim and Christy discuss with us sort of the conditions of the pool. And at the conclusion of that, I thought it would be wise for all of us to have a tour of the pool and also the plant facilities that Jim and Christy are going to be referring to. And it's a lot of the behind the scene things on the pool that you don't see when you walk into it that are deteriorating and causing the issues and concerns and the problems that we face today with our city pool. So does anyone have any questions before we move on to Jim? Okay, Jim?
Okay. They kind of going over the history, and I won't go over every single detail that I put in the report, but basically in 1953, a committee was formed by then Mayor McBride to look at whether the feasibility of putting together a pool and what they wanted to do. Recommendation was brought back that they build a pool, and a location was decided upon, and they decided they were looking between two locations. One was Rushton, and then the one was over here at 60 First and Woodson, which would become Victor Anderson Park. And the decision was made to put the place there, and they were also going to be building City Hall and eventually adding on the police department in that area. So they put together a proposal. Larkin took that they were the kind of the contractor designer of the pool and went out for bid, and in '56 the pool was dedicated, and the pool at that time was a T-shaped pool. And when we go over there, you'll notice that what that is the existing east pool and the diving well. And they were one body of water at that time, and the diving well was not the dimensions and depth that it is now. It was much shallower than it was, and that was one body of water. And then there was a junior wading pool that was put in. In 1965, so that pool basically stayed pretty much the same until '65. There were a number of kind of small problems and things going on with the pool at that time, some leakage and some different things, and they went back and did some more feasibility on what it would take to repair some of those things, and also what it would take to add an additional pool on. And again, Larkin came on board, and the West Pool, which is our competition pool, was then built and added onto that. And then whatever issues and problems they were having at that time, they changed. And at that time, they were also, in '56, they were using what's called a sand filter. And there's different ways to filter your water, but they were running the water through a kind of a high-rate sand filter at that time, or a pressure sand filter. And they pulled that out and put in a diatomaceous earth filter, which is just another way of filtering water without a huge chemical lesson. But diatomaceous earth is just another way that the water goes through that process, goes through those filters, and pulled out and is cleaned. So that was removed and put in. Pretty much the pool kind of stayed like it was again until '87. And in '87, the bathhouse and concession stands were redone and relocated. And when they did that, that kind of changed a little bit of the dimension of the pool. I think it changed kind of where you entered from and the locations of some of the different things. And that bathhouse is the existing bathhouse that is up there, and it was dedicated in 1987. The pool pretty much stayed the same. It was, some guidelines were changed on diving between 1965 and 1996 concerning the heights and regulations for your depth of water that you had to have 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter diving platforms. And the Mission Pool at that time didn't meet those. They had taken the 3 meter diving platform out. And they started in '94 putting together plans for kind of doing some restructuring and remodeling at the pool. And at that time, they decided that they wanted to lower the level of the diving well and separate it from the east pool, which means what they did was they came in and they put that wall. There's now a wall, which is a surge tank, basically a pass-through between the two. It has a shell on the top of it, a concrete kind of walkway on the top of it. Water passes through between the two, but they are separated out. And that it was lowered to 13 feet for diving depth, so that you could have the diving boards and be able to use those. Additionally, the wading pools were redone, and the filter pit and swim team buildings were built. And at that time, they built those buildings. They put them in, and one of the things we'll talk about in conditions of the pool is the way the filter house was built. Filters should traditionally be built below the level of your lowest body of water. That allows gravity to feed your water down into the filter pit, allowing for easier filtration of your water and less use of pumps and other means to move that water. This pump house was built above the level of the west pool, which requires what they call a low lift pump to be running 24/7 to suck water from that pool up into the filter pit. Going through the minutes, you can go through and look at those. One of the considerations they were putting into at that time was the justification was that it was needed to be ADA compliant. And I would say there are probably better ways to make it ADA compliant, but that's me throwing in a little bit of my own personal thing. But anyway, so that was put in, and that kind of gets us to where we're at now. And some of the decisions and things that were made along that way have kind of led to the conditions that we're in now. And that's kind of the brief history. Is there anything else you wanted me to include?
No, I think that kind of overviews our history.
Anybody have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about some of that history? And you'll be able to read this through, and then you're going to be going over this again next at your next meeting. But I wanted you to kind of have a brief overview of it all as we start moving in, and then before you actually read it, so that if you have any specific questions, then you can address those next week. I mean, at your next meeting.
So
I remember at the meetings a few years ago, they had talked about there being just one filtration system for the entire complex, and code now says that each individual pool has to have its own. Is that correct?
I will tell you, I'm not 100% sure what the code now stipulates, but they are, yes. All 5 bodies of water now are filtrated on one filter system, which means if we have an incident in the one of the kiddie pools, wading pools there, that I have to clear all the pools because they're all on the same filtration, which also adds to problems with how you disperse your chlorine. Keeping residual chlorine in all the pools at the proper levels becomes an issue. And so there are different things like that, yes. So it would be beneficial to have those on separate filtration systems.
Alan?
This is kind of away from the place, but when this pool is closed in summer, do you run the pool over at the PAL Center?
I do.
Okay, so that's part of your rec program then that you're employed with then?
Yes.
Okay, I just want that for clarification.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Go ahead,
As far as the compliance with today's building or swimming pool codes or anything like that, is there other factors that where the pool is not in compliance right now with the new municipality swimming pool regulations that are they stated here as far as would have to be a must to address?
There are some things we'd have to address. Well, the big one would be turnover rate. With the current system and the way it is right now, there is I don't know it off the top of my head, but there is a set rate, number of hours that you're allowed to turn your pool over. And I don't know, do you know what that is off the top of your head?
It's based on the gallonage of water, but every pool this day and age should turn over completely, all the water go through the filtration system within 6 to 8 hours.
Okay.
I think some of that's addressed in the 2008 feasibility study, but go ahead, I mean.
Well, my is just trying to see these foreseeing costs if the existing pool is kept, as far as bringing it up to, compliance with the requirements that are required, like every pool requiring its own separate filtration system. I mean, is that a requirement, or is, even, just as you said, all 5 pools use the same filtration system, but is it a requirement?
On any new construction.
Okay, so this pool is grandfathered in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was...
Another issue that you'll have that depending on what the codes and things do is right now diatomaceous earth, which is the current filter system that we have, it bonds to the filters, and we'll see that when it goes over. It cannot be sent, you can't send that out to regular sewer. It has to be separated, put in another pit, and then shipped through the sanitary sewer system. Currently, they are looking at changing that, and if they change that system, then that would have to be vacuumed and then shipped elsewhere, off-site, if they make that change in the code. And I know that's one of the things they've been looking at doing. So
I can't hear you.
the diatomaceous earth, it's a powdered substance, and you'll see it when we go over there. every time we backwash, which is backwash the pool, which is once a week right now, we have to clean off all the filter elements. When you clean all those off, all of that DE falls down and gets sucked into another pit, and then it has to be, that has to be basically washed out into the sanitary sewer. It's got to be sucked in through there. There's some legislation going on in Johnson County Environmental talking about no longer allowing it even to go to the sanitary sewer. It would have to be vacuumed and taken to a secure location.
Kind of like a septic tank system,
Yeah.
same basis.
Same basis.
So that's additional cost then?
It would be if that went through. We
Is
weren't
that
allowed to do
like,
that anymore.
like the trash truck coming to pick that up and then hauling
Yeah,
it
be
somewhere?
like it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's implemented during a year period, will you have to shut the pool down and start over?
No, I'm not really sure how that would work. Generally, they give you a certain amount of time to come in compliance with that, so.
And that would be for all of Johnson County pools, right?
Be offered, yeah.
So
There-
everybody would be
Yeah.
setting up the system.
And I don't know how many, but there are probably, you could probably count on one hand in the county how many pools use diatomaceous earth with the same fin filtering system that we use it in. You probably see it a lot more in maybe some of your outlying pools, but not nearly as much in that same level. You can buy diatomaceous earth filters now that are more encased. They still have to be changed, but they're a little bit different in how they run.
Okay, Brad?
No, that's good. I mean,
Okay. All right, I think the next thing then we'll have is we'll move on to the conditions of our existing pool. So Jim, go ahead and stand back up.
I don't like the conditions of our pool.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I
It's
think
okay.
I want you to talk about what our existing conditions are, and then also the conditions that we've been wrestling with for the last number of years, because this is not a new issue.
No.
Is what I want
Yeah.
everyone to have all that information.
Okay. The best way to kind of do this, to talk about the existing conditions, is to talk about in 1996 when the renovations were complete. That was the last time anything major was done, and those problems, kind of everything from here to there, they've kind of yo-yoed back and forth, the different things that we've been dealing with. A lot of it has to do with the filtration system itself. The current filtration system with the diatomaceous earth, the way that works is that the low lift pump pulls the water into the pit, and we'll see the pit when we go over there. It pulls it up into there. It goes through all the fins, kind of like your air passes through your filter on your air conditioner, okay? Goes through that, it's sucked into the recirculation pipe, and then from the recirculation pipe it goes out into the different bodies of water. It goes sent back out to the pool. There are no safeties any longer attached to the low lift in the filter pit, meaning that the water levels can fluctuate without any control. We have to constantly be back there adjusting the pressure on the pumps, because the floats and switches and valves that would control that and make it an automated process like it should be no longer exist. Some of those are due to mechanical failure, some of those are due to rust and corrosion that have basically solidified valves in areas so they no longer can work. And some of that is just due to the age of the system itself.
Sorry,
It's okay.
time for my wife's medicine.
So that portion of it becomes very difficult. Filtering and backwashing the pool itself, every week that pit has to be emptied. That's 10,000 gallons of water that have to be emptied out. Fins have to be washed off, and DE has to be placed in. The only way right now to get the DE into the pool is to open the bags and to put them direct. You pour them in, and the recirc pulls it onto those fins and ties them on. The thing to know about DE is that it is a carcinogen. All right, so I only allow myself and my pool manager to go in there. We have to wear the masks, gloves and everything, and you have to go in there, and you have to be very careful about how you pour that stuff in, and it stays in the air, and it kind of, everything that gets on, you can kind of feel it. It just, it's particles and stuff that are coming down the show. You're pouring that stuff into the pool, and every week we're putting a bag and a half of that in there, and then every week we're taking that off and sending it away to the sanitary sewer. once you do that, talking about reopening the valves, you have to close the valves on all the pools. The valves are all rusted, so sometimes they stick a lot, and getting them open can be a challenge. They also, the flow meters that go out to them don't register properly, so you don't know exactly how much pressure you're sending out to them. And certain valves in the west pool have hardened to the fact that you can't adjust the flow rate going in or coming back. This does two things. It causes your west pool to overflow the gutter system, which is poor recirculation, and it also causes for bad levels of chlorine. Your residual chlorine can't maintain it as well, so we have to maintain that a lot by hand. We do tests over there every 2 hours. Johnson County only requires you to do it, I believe, once a day, twice a day now. Twice a day. We do it every 2 hours because I want to make sure that we're keeping up and making sure that the levels are where they need to be all the time. But we are constantly having to watch that.
I can't hear you again.
Sorry. We're constantly having to watch that, those levels, and maintain and do maintenance on those by hand, whether that's adding bleach by hand to the pool at times, or pouring it into the filter pit area, and looking at other chemicals that we have to put in to maintain it. Yes?
Does this require you to hire any additional help, this particular thing?
Not really additional help. It just requires very attentive staff to that. I mean, I spend a lot more time on that pool than I should have, than really anybody should have to. And not that it's not important to maintain it, but with everything that's going on in there, if that automated system is working correctly, I wouldn't have near the problems. We wouldn't have to go down there every 50 minutes. We could relax back on how many times a day we needed to test, because we could actually trust the equipment and pieces that were down there keeping the pool running. Another problem we have with the filtration system is that every time we have a power blip in the city, and I don't know if we've had one of those recently, blip, it shuts off the circulation pump. When the circulation pump shuts off, the low lift pump, if it is in the automatic position, also shuts off. When that happens, the filter pit drains, and your only option is to backwash again. Backwashing is a 3-hour process, and again, we talked about it takes 2 bags of DE, and DE is not cheap. I can provide you guys the cost for it, but it is not a cheap chemical to put in your pool every couple of weeks. In 1 week over the summer, we had to backwash 3 times. Because every time that hits, and it doesn't ever go off at 1:30 in the afternoon when we can see it. It goes off at 4 in the morning, and you come in. The other problem with that is if the pump happens to go, if the low lift pump is in the hand mode instead of the automatic mode, which it can sometimes be in and sometimes needs to operate in, when the recirculation pump shuts off, it stays on, and it just pumps all the water out of the pool. And then you'll notice that we have a 6th body of water called the parking lot in the police station. So you'll see that, and it can pump water out at a very high rate. It's what it's designed to do. So
anytime a storm blows through, one of us is always at the pool, because if you get any type of an electrical blip, you have to be prepared to respond immediately.
Yeah.
You do a very good job covering your frustration. You don't have to do that.
You talked about maintenance and that during the pool operation and the cost part of it and the antiquity of the equipment. What do you do when the pool is closed for preventive maintenance and on this equipment? What's your guidelines on, the pool works, but it's empty in the summertime or partly empty?
Sure.